Warm welcome, greetings of the day to all the learners of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. This session is for all the students of MBA first semester course Managerial Communication. Today we shall be discussing in continuation of the previous lessons, that is communication, meaning, process, types, which we already discussed. Today we shall talk about the 7 C's of communication. Basically what happens is when we communicate, whether we are listening or whether we are speaking, we basically have to think whether we are communicating effectively or not. So that effectiveness comes only when certain principles are to be kept in mind. These principles in the literature of managerial communication, they are termed as 7 C's. Continuation of those 7 C's are also called as 4S of communication. So, in today's lesson, in this session, we will talk about the 7 C's and the 4S. Let us first know how communication can be made effective, or what is effective communication. Now, communication is said to be effective when there is shared meaning. It means that whatever was the message which was being sent, that is received in the same sense in which it was being sent. There must be a mutual understanding between the sender and between the receiver when the transmission of ideas and information is happening. So, therefore, effective communication will occur when the meaning is shared in a same sense by both the sender and the receiver. Whatever is being sent by the sender, whatever is the message, the content, the intention of that message should be received and understood in the same way by the receiver as well. So, we can say that effective communication is actually using language which is appropriate to the other's level of understanding. In a classroom, for example, if as a teacher I use technical words without having to explain basics to the students, then their level of understanding I have not understood as a communicator. So, my communication will not be effective. So, if my communication as a teacher needs to be effective, then I will have to use a language that is appropriate to the level of understanding of the student. So, whoever are the learner, I will have to understand what is the ability of the learner to comprehend or understand what I am trying to tell. So, only then my communication can be effective. Same way in organizations also, if there is a new employee who has joined, who is not having an awareness about the technicalities of the work, but he is new completely to the workplace. If you assign him works which are routine matters or which are operational matters in the company, it may take some time for him to understand. So, therefore, first and foremost priority should be that the immediate manager should explain depending upon the level of understanding of that particular employee. Only then the employee will be able to do the task well. So, that way effective communication depending upon the level of understanding of the receiver. That is one. Second thing is that with whomever you are trying to communicate, what kind of a relationship do you have with them? So, communication can be effective only when you are able to develop some kind of a social relation with the person with whom you are communicating. Otherwise, when there is no connect between the speaker and between the listener, then communication will not be effective as such. Similarly, whoever is the speaker, if the communication has to be effective, they will have to facilitate openness, honesty, cooperation, and also provide a space for feedback and listen to whatever are the opinions of the listeners as such. All these put together, we can say that communication can be rendered to be effective. With this background, let us come now to an understanding of what are the 7 C's of communication, or what are the principles of communication. As each one of this principle begins, the word begins with the letter C. That is how these are called as the 7 C's of communication. These are conciseness, credibility, clarity, correctness, completeness, coherence, and continuity. All these we shall dwell in detail now. First one, to begin with, credibility. Whenever a person is trying to communicate, all communication should start with a climate of belief. Listeners must have a confidence in the speaker. If the sender or the speaker establishes his credibility, listeners will not have any problem in accepting the statement. And how do you establish credibility? Establishing credibility is not the outcome of a one-shot statement. You cannot just make a statement and tell the receiver that, believe me. It is through constant interaction that the sender has with the receiver of the communication that credibility can be established. And there should also be willingness on the part of the receiver to accept the statements which are coming and believe that the statements are true and honest. If the manager in a company is trying to convey something to the employee should believe that that communication is honest and truthful and hence credible from the side of the manager. Now, once the credibility is established, attempts should also be made that the communication should be courteous. Not only though credibility, belief and trust is established, but if the communication comes very harsh, even then the receiver may fluctuate with the credibility. Therefore, no doubt you have established credibility, but at the same time as a speaker you should also be courteous in your communication. Courtesy while speaking is all about being positive and being focused at the audience, making use of the right words with the audience, showing respect to the receiver of the message, not being biased when the person is speaking. All that adds to credibility. We have seen through history there have been speakers whose speeches have evoked a lot of positive responses from the audiences. When you listen speeches in a hall where public cheer, then you understand that they are able to connect with the speaker and that credibility is instantly established there. So therefore, the first C here is to do with credibility, where we are talking about a climate of belief, trust, confidence in the receiver, in the sender, and the receiver should also be treated courteously by the sender of the message or whoever is the speaker, and at the same time there should also be a positive atmosphere whenever the speaker is speaking with the listener who is there. That is your first C, which is called credibility. The second C is completeness. Now, all the facts which are necessary for any content of a message should be complete. A sender of a message must take into consideration the receiver's mindset and then convey the message accordingly. In case the sender of the message feels that there is an additional information that is required to be communicated, then he will have to communicate even that. Informations which are based upon facts and figures, informations which are supported by appropriate examples, informations which are contemporary and relevant to the context, all of them will bring about completeness in the message which is being communicated. And also, complete communication will help in better decision making. As a receiver of the message, when the information is complete to me, I will be able to make appropriate decisions depending on whatever message is being conveyed. And the criticality or the importance of the message also will come only when the message is complete as such, because it will persuade the audience. So the second C here is completeness, where the speaker will have to take care about all the facts which are required by the audiences, enhance the reputation of whatever is the message conveyed by making it complete, give all the additional information which is necessary in order to explain that particular message or bring about clarity in the mind of the receiver related to completeness of that particular message which is there. For example, in a company, if you give a target to the employees, you should also tell them by what date they are supposed to fulfill that particular target. You are asking the employees in a production department to produce 100 units. By when do you want the 100 units to be complete? That should be conveyed. Otherwise, the information will be incomplete. Simply telling them to produce 100 units without giving a deadline will not be able to help them to complete that particular task. So therefore, completeness of the message will come only when you are trying to tell them the target as well as a deadline by which they are supposed to be completing that production. So that way message will become complete. So communication can be effective only when this second C, which is completeness, is being taken into consideration. The third C is clarity, where we are talking about meaning of the message. clarity is nothing but adding meaning to the message. Transmission of the message in a manner which makes it simple for the receiver to understand is what is your clarity. Using simple language, easy sentence constructions which are not difficult for the receiver to grasp, to understand should be there. Basic intention of any message which gets communicated is its clarity. So, complete clarity of thought will enhance the meaning of the message. Whenever the sender is sending some message, if the message is having too many technical jargons, words which are not commonly understandable, words which are of high English language or any other language which is used in the formal context, words which are away from whatever is the work which is done by the employee, then they may not be able to understand such words. So, therefore, exact, appropriate, concrete words must be used as such. For example, if you talk about use of artificial intelligence in workplace. Now, artificial intelligence, an employee who is of an average knowledge will be able to understand. But if you get into deeper and tell them about blockchain, or ask them about natural language processing, or tell them about algorithms and all, it will be difficult for them to understand the message there. So, simplicity of the message, using simpler words, terms which the employee is able to understand, that should be there. Similarly, even in a conversation of a teacher and a student, without having to explain, give clarity about the basics or the fundamentals of a particular subject, if the teacher is jumping towards advanced topics, then it would be difficult for students to understand because they don't have clarity about the basics of that particular subject. So, communication will not be rendered effective when there is no clarity as such. So, adding meaning to the message, making it simple, using language which is understandable by the receiver, avoiding all kinds of technical jargons which are there, makes the message exact, appropriate and understandable and clear to the receiver as such. So, we have covered credibility, where we are talking about a sense of belief, trust in the speaker. Completeness, where we say that the message should be complete, it should have all facts, figures, so that better decision making can be made. Third, clarity, where we are talking about use of language which is understandable by the receiver, simple messages, avoiding technical jargons there. The next one is, the fourth C is correctness. Whoever is the sender of the message, first of all, the sender himself should have a complete knowledge about what the message is. Without the sender himself having to understand the message, if he tries to convey that to the receiver, that may create confusion in the mind of the receiver. So, first of all, whoever is the communicator, speaker or the sender, their knowledge should be there about the message. That is one. Second, they should also have knowledge about the receiver. Who is the receiver? How is the receiver able to interpret the information? Say, when I talk, I should know who are my audiences. Based on my audience, I try to change my message, or I try to make modifications to what I am trying to convey, so that my audiences are able to understand me. So, that way, first of all, I should know what I am speaking, and I should also know to whom I am speaking. So, knowledge about the message and knowledge about the recipient of the message is very necessary for message to go correctly to the audiences. And their knowledge, their educational background, the status of the receiver, all that will help the sender to formulate his message. When I am, say for example, when I am going to a class where I am teaching undergraduates, I have to understand that their level of knowledge, their level of reception is different from where I go to learners who are in master's class or who are in a PhD class. So, what happens there, depending upon the educational background, their level of understanding, I will have to formulate my message so that they understand it correctly. And then discrepancies which are there between the usage and comprehension of terms, all that also creates miscommunication. So, my message will be incorrect if there is a discrepancy, if there is a difference between what I am telling and what is actually being used in practice as such. Similarly, I can give correct messages only when I am backing all my messages with facts, figures, and accuracy is there. For example, when I am talking about growth of India, or I'm talking about GDP rate, or I'm talking about employment, all these statistics which I may be quoting, I will have to quote it correctly depending upon authentic sources which are there, so that the receiver is also convinced that what I am telling is correct as such. So that way, correct communication is one where message is exact, correct, and well timed. Timing of the message is also essential, which will come a little later, because it boosts up the confidence level of the receiver and will have a greater impact on the receivers who are there. Even for the receiver to understand, it will be easy when the message is accurate, correct, backed by facts and figures, and it is also very precise as such. So correctness here is in terms of all understanding of the receiver related to not only the message, the recipients, but also the sender should be able to understand what he is trying to tell, backing it by all facts, figures, and correct information which he will have to pass on to the people there. So that way, correctness will be the fourth C which will come. So we have credibility, completeness, clarity, and correctness. These are the first four things which are there. The fifth one is consistency. As far as possible, whoever is the speaker, they should be consistent in the thought flow. There should not be too many ups and downs that might lead to confusion in the mind of the receiver. Say for example, when I am talking, if the topic is debatable, then I will, if I am taking a stand in the beginning, then I will have to see to it that my stand is observed throughout my conversation. I should not be jumping between my preferences which I am giving throughout my conversation as such. If a certain stand has been taken, it should be observed without big deviations throughout the talk which I am giving, in which the sender is desiring that there is some kind of an influence which the receiver should have, or the listeners who are there, there should be some kind of a change in the understanding of that particular situation. So he should ensure, whoever is the speaker should ensure that that particular shift which you are expecting from the audience is gradual, and it is not hard for the receiver to understand the message. So there should be consistency which the speaker will have to maintain. Whatever the talk is being given by the speaker, whatever are the facts, figures which are being told, all of them should be consistent as such. Otherwise, inconsistencies, discrepancies, differences which are there in any message which is passed on, that will not help the receiver to understand the exact content or the intention, what was being actually, what is the speaker trying to tell me. That question should not be there in the receiver as such. Only when consistency is practiced by the speaker, then only you can say that communication has been effective as such. So therefore, the approach which the speaker is adopting should be consistent in a particular manner. There have been lot of talks or debates where people take stances, and then during the course of the talk, in the conversation, the stance changes. So that way the receiver will be confused in order to understand what is it that the speaker is trying to convey to that particular through that particular message. So consistency should also be maintained. Then you have the sixth one, which is to do with concreteness. Concrete, specific expressions without vagueness, without abstract expression, that should be taken into consideration. Abstractions or it could actually disturb the mind of the sender and also the receiver. Say for example, instead of saying that there has been a rise in employment, if I support my talk with figures saying that there has been a rise to the extent of 5% when compared to last year, or I say that number of girl students who enrolled in a particular course has increased. If I simply say increased, it is very abstract. If I say it has increased by 5% when compared to last year, it has increased in this course of MA when compared to MBA, when I am comparing, then in that particular sense there is some kind of a strong message which I am sending, because it has got concrete information to it. It is not abstract, it is not incomplete there. And also the receiver will be it will be apt for the listener to listen and comprehend the details which are there. When any message of the speaker is supported with specific facts, figures, use of words which are clear, it will automatically build the message to be concrete and help that the message is not misinterpreted as such. So that way care should be taken that by the sender of the message to add all relevant facts and figures to that particular message to make it more concrete as such. That also enhances the type of communication. The last C here is conciseness. Whatever is the message which is being communicated should be brief, precise, concise. Simple, brief statements which are being made are more effective and influential when compared to long talks which are being made. Even if you see, the speeches which are given in parliament or other in India or other parts of the world, though they are all the ministers and members of the parliament, they do not have much time to speak. Each one of them is given not more than 5 to 7 minutes, maximum 10 minutes. So what all do you convey in that particular given point of time? The person will have to be very brief, concise, and see to it that he is making an impact on the audience. The quantum of information that the speaker is trying to convey should be just right. It should neither be too much nor too little, because concise communication is both time saving as well as cost saving, and it will underline and highlight the main message without avoiding by avoiding all kinds of excessive and needless words. When the speaker is speaking, all kinds of additional information which may become irrelevant for the listener to listen, all that should be avoided, and the message should be very precise, short. Only essentialities of a message should be conveyed. For example, in a class also, we usually say that the average listening capacity of a human is not more than 40 minutes. Now why does that happen? Because the person is able to pay complete attention for that span of at least 40 minutes. So as a teacher, when my class is about 60 minutes, in 40 minutes, what are my listeners attentively listening, or are they listening passively, or are they simply hearing? These things will depend upon how concise I am and how briefly I am trying to explain to them, by not missing the essentials. That also is very, very important, that the essential, in the disguise of being brief, the essentials of the message should not be lost as such. So whatever are the important essentials of the message, that should be conveyed, but at the same time the message should be very short, brief, and essential. We say, right, brevity or shortness is actually the soul of wit. When we say communicators, orators, good orators are those who also make use of lot of witty messages, and when the message is witty, which has got laughter and sarcasm to it, then we say that that itself is the soul of wit. Brevity or being brief actually is very essential. So a concise message will be more appealing and more comprehensible to the audiences, and also message should be non-repetitive in nature. When I am talking, say, for about 30-40 minutes, how many times am I repeating the same words or sentences in my message? That also makes it effective or ineffective. Non-repetitiveness of the message is also very essential. So these are the 7 C's which are related to effectiveness of communication. Credibility, where we are talking about trust, belief in the speaker who is speaking, which cannot be established as a one-time activity, but through the contact or the rapport which the speaker builds with the receiver. So credibility. Second, completeness, where your message should be backed by all facts, figures, and it should enhance the reputation of the message. Then clarity, the message should be clear, all kinds of jargons, abstractness, technical language should be avoided in the message. It should be very simple. Clarity. Then message should be correct, depending upon whatever is the background of the receiver. As a sender, I will have to give the correct information, so it should be correct. Then I should also have consistency in whatever I am telling, so there should be consistency in the message. And concreteness, when it is backed by relevant information, facts and figures, and conciseness, where the message is going to be brief and not too long, but it should be short. These are the 7 C's which are there. These are there which are in the literature, but apart from these there are other C's also which are to be taken into consideration, that is other things which make communication effective. One is content. Content will decide your audience. Depending upon the situation of the receiver, the content will have to be modified. See, sometimes the speakers come prepared, but then depending upon the mood of the receiver, depending upon how are the receivers responding, depending upon what kind of situations are happening in the delivery hall or wherever the lecture is being delivered, based on that the speaker will have to modify the content and also sometimes alter, make it more simpler, or if the audiences are below his level of understanding, or enhance that particular message when he feels that the audience are above the level of understanding which is there. So content should be there. Context, that is the social environment in which I am speaking. Are the audiences participating and giving me feedback? See, as a teacher, the basic rule of teaching or presentation, we say that, establish eye contact. So when we actually enter into the class, we look at all the students and then see, whether we are able to reach them by reading their eyes. So when we look into the eyes, we understand whether they are with us or not with us. So the context in which we are telling, are people participating? Is there a positive feedback which is coming? Though they may not tell verbally, but there may be non-verbal signals which can be there from the audiences. So I should be able to understand those signals to make my communication effective. Similarly, I should also empathize, because see, as a speaker you have content with you, but listeners are sitting back and listening. So when I am speaking, I should actually also step into the shoes of the listeners and try to understand things from their perspective, not try to bore them with heavy doses of messages, technical jargons which actually come into, and at the same time use multiple channels when I am trying to communicate. So all those 4 C's also in the literature, they have tried to convey it in the form of 4S, where they say that the message should be short so that it brings about economy in the entire talk. The message should be simple so that it impresses the receivers of the message. There should be a sincere effort on the part of the speaker so that he is able to convince the receivers of the message, and the message should also be strong, because you ultimately are communicating in order to influence the other person. And shortness basically is, when the message is brief, it's more effective. Flooding messages with high sounding words may not create an impact. Sometimes you have to be very brief to create an impact. So shortness is very essential there. Similarly, simple terminology, equally simple concepts, usage of words and ideas which are revealing clarity in the thinking process of the sender also is very essential there. So simplicity. Strength, where you are talking about making your message and statements very strong, where half-heartedness, utterances which are there, where you yourself don't believe in what you are speaking, will never bring about conviction from the side of the listener also. So strength of the message is also essential. And sincerity. See, ultimately any person is trying to speak and communicate because there is an effort to influence the listener. So when sincerity is there, automatically the information will be genuine, and the entire communication also will become very effective then. So that way, in today's session, we have spoken about how to make communication effective. We have said that effective communication is one where you can talk about making your communication through shared meaning. Whatever you are sending, the same thing should be received and understood by the receiver. Mutual understanding is established, and that can be done only when the 7 C's are followed. The message should be, the 7 C's or the principles of communication talks about credibility, bringing belief and trust in the speaker, making the message correct, having continuity in the message, making the message concise and brief, being clear in whatever you are trying to communicate, giving message which is complete and not incomplete information, and at the same time you are trying to see that clarity is being ensured. All these 7 C's are converted into 4S where you talk about making message short, simple, sincere effort, and bringing about strength in that particular message. So we can say that any communication can be effective only when the communicator is able to not only speak but read the mind of the receiver. You should be in a position to understand who is my receiver. Is my receiver able to understand what I am trying to speak? So that way, in today's session, we have spoken about the 7 C's and the 4 S, which try to make communication effective. All these C's and S apply not only to formal communication in a company or organization, but it applies to all our daily lives also. We talk about all social relations at home, we talk about moving with the friends or family. All of that brings about effectiveness in communication. So when all these C's and S are followed, any type of communication in a formal or informal setup will be effective. That is with your 7 C's. Thank you so much.